Everybody, welcome back to Wild Black. That's when Art would say, everybody, welcome back, welcome back. Art cannot be here. He could not make part 2 of this dope episode series with Steve and Dr. Love, but I'm glad you came back with us. Listen, if you heard last week's episode, then you got his story. You understand why he is someone we should be listening to and what his mark should be, will be on the world. You also got a chance to hear a lot about their clone, Tyrone. And I expect you've probably seen it by now as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk more about how he got positioned to be where he is now, how he became a storyteller with access to platforms that reach you every single day. Dreaming, mentorship, opportunity creating, that is what this episode is about. You did not hear part 1. First off, shame on you. Second off, go back and consume it. Gobble it up. Listen. Learn. There's a bunch coming your way. With that, Steve and brother, welcome back to Wild Black.
Thank you for having me back, man.
Man, I'm only going to bring it up one time.
Okay,
bring up they clone, Tyrone, one more time.
Okay.
I'm probably lying. Brother, just to kind of reorient the people who are coming back.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen it now. What do you want to tell them? What do you want to challenge them with now that they have seen this movie? How should they behave? How should they act? What should they do?
I mean, I think if you've seen the movie, I think you got to unpack it, right? If you already unpacked it, then you probably got a lot of questions. Probably more questions than answers. That's a good thing, though. I think having as many conversations as you can with friends and family and colleagues, that's really that's all I really want is people just to talk about it, not just talk about the movie, but talk about the things that we're kind of unpacking in the movie, too.
Yeah. So this is where I want to dive in. How did you get here? The very first thing that I think had to happen was there had to be a dream someplace along the line.
Mm-hmm.
It might not be the initial catalyst, right? But along the journey you've been on, you had to look up at some point and say, I am this today, and I want to be that tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in your head, go back to that moment, whether that's South Carolina, whether that's Morehouse, wherever that is, and tell me a little bit about that moment and what that dream was.
Man, you get me crying in here, man.
Hey, brother, listen. It wouldn't be the first time. It wouldn't be the last for you or for me, probably.
Yeah. Nah, I mean, the moment that the dream was very, very clear to me.
Right.
And which was also the moment that I was absolutely sure that I would run through a wall and do it with integrity and tenacity that we talked about in the last episode.
Right.
Was early days of high school. To paint the picture, where I went to high school in South Carolina in Bennettsville, Marlboro County, is rural, right? Where I grew up initially is all family farms in York, South Carolina.
Right.
Like I told y'all about my granddad and his farm, et cetera, which is still in the family.
Yeah. Congrats to that.
Amen. We're all very conscious and working hard to make sure that it stays in the family and protected, right? But where I went to high school is just as country. But it's not as many family farms. It's industrial. It's a lot of industrial farms, right? There's tobacco and cotton, all those things. So if you're on a part of the 4 rich families that own pretty much everything in the town, it doesn't matter what color you are or what have you. Like it's more than likely, a lot of people are in poverty in those areas, right? Because of the drastic difference in ownership. In that town, across from my high school and across from my church and just about any other, staple of our community is a cotton field, literally.
Right.
And so the moment I remember the dream becoming so clear to me and also being so clear that I'm going to do whatever I have to do within reason to get after it.
Right.
Was standing on the porch of my father's church, Trinity United Methodist Church. Shout out to everybody at Trinity. Standing on the porch of my father's church, hanging out like I did every Sunday with my boys, right? Just kind of talking junk, whatever. And this lady from the church comes out there, and she kind of was the one, who was like everybody's auntie, right? Whether you wanted her to be or not, who would say to you, what are you doing with yourself? Pull your pants up, whatever else, right? How are your grades, all that kind of stuff. And she said, and this day it didn't feel, to me, it did not feel like it was to inspire. It felt like it was to chastise. And she said to each one of us, what are you doing? Y'all just out here kind of hanging out. What are you doing? Right? What do you want to do? So each one of us kind of tells what you want to do with your life. When one guy wanted to play basketball, another guy wanted to play football, another guy wanted to go to college and figure it out, you know. And of course, she shot down most of those dreams. She gets to me.
Yeah.
Now, we in the South. I'm the preacher's kid. I'm the preacher's son. You assume that there would be some sort of level of couth that comes with that approach, right?
Right.
It did not. She didn't care. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I'm going to be a producer and make movies in Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
Right?
You knew.
And I'm early high school. I was very clear. God had showed me the vision at a very young age of what I was going to do. But I didn't know how. And I don't think I really believed it. Right? But that moment, she was like, okay, what's your backup plan? Because that's not be good. This is after she just tore everybody else's dreams apart. You know, what are you going to do? I was like, that's what I'm going to do. What's your backup plan? I was like, I don't have a backup plan. That is the plan. That is plan A, B, C, and D. That's what we're doing. Right? Now, I'm saying that boldly, looking past her at a cotton field, right? Mm-hmm. But it was just in me. God had kind of put that in my spirit that that's what I was going to do. So that was the moment I knew that I had to do it because this was in the face of somebody who I kind of respected and had to boldly just defy and say, like, this is what I'm doing. Don't ask me. You know how Serena Williams' dad in that clip was like, don't mess with that girl, that little black girl's confidence. Like she said what she said. Yep. That's how I felt for myself, right? Yeah. And so from then on, it was like, all right, game on. Like I got to do this. Not to prove just some one person wrong, but more so
prove yourself right.
Prove myself right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel that, man. Yeah. For me, there's not a word for this. Not for me, right? There's this feeling, this innate feeling inside of me. Like as I sit here today at 47, that I did not realize until about 35 years old. Now, that's not to say I didn't have dreams before. I had plenty of them, right? Some were bigger than others, some were badder than others, but someplace along the time of about 33, 34, 35, God placed inside of me this hyper-focus. Mm-hmm. And it's going to sound strange to hear this. It was a super unfocused hyper-focus. And just give me a second to kind of massage that in for you. It wasn't that I was focused on any one thing. I wasn't focused on building wealth. I wasn't focused on storytelling. I wasn't focused on marketing. I was working in marketing at the time. Mm-hmm. I wasn't focused on speaking up for my people or becoming a champion. But I was hyper-focused on learning to get focused. Mm-hmm. The way I used to always feel successful, right? And I was successful from the outside in because I had all the things that made people assume I was successful. I had a car and I had a house. My kids were dressed well. Mm-hmm. We took vacations whenever we wanted to. Like I didn't want for anything. If I wanted it, I could go get it. But it was such a facade. It was a lie. And it was a lie that I pushed to everyone, including myself. Mm-hmm. Like I believed that. And then through this ordained ability to find focus, I found flaws. I found the smoke and mirrors that I was putting up for everyone around me to consume and to believe, including myself. And when I began ripping them down, it was a painful, painful process, right? Mm-hmm. It was a process that you go through alone. These are not things that my wife could walk me through.
That's right.
These are things that I had to go through alone. I won't say alone, with God, right? And through that, I found the ability to redefine what success. At the time, success was for me, how busy was I? I would do a little bit over here and a little bit over there and a little bit over here and a little bit over there. And I'd feel tired and exhausted at the end of the day. And I found meaning in that exhaustion. I'm busy. Therefore, I am or will be successful because how can I not? The analogy I give is I'd stand in the middle of a room, an empty room, and I'd take 10,000 steps, each step in a different direction. And at the end of the day, I was no closer to the door than when I started, but my feet hurt like hell. That was
you were busy.
success, right? I was
Mm-hmm.
busy.
Mm-hmm.
And through that experience and that breaking down of the facade I was telling everyone else and myself, I found the ability to truly focus. And when I began to focus, that's when, to go back to episode 1, that's when passion and love became more clear to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? All of a sudden, I knew what I was supposed to be doing. It was literally a light bulb that went on, but it was a slow turn, right? And so then I started looking at my life with this filtration system that I still adopted now. I have 3 very, very specific goals. I want to retire well and early. I want to create a financial and educational legacy for my children, and I want to create a world in which my children are free to be whoever they are ordained and authentically being. I want them to live in that world where there are no excuses that anyone puts upon them that limit who they can become.
Mm-hmm.
That moment you had looking at the cotton field, I want them to feel every bit as empowered as you did to say, nah, this is who I'm going to be. Right? And that's what I work every day toward. I use this formula that says 90 to 95% of all the things that I say yes to must meet the criteria of helping me achieve 1, 2, or 3 of those goals, and those goals are related.
Mm-hmm.
In that, what I found was when I got aligned, when my steps were ordained, when I was in communion and conversation with God, everything flowed. Every opportunity that came my way was tied to those 3 goals. Everything God brought me, and everything God brought me through a friend, through a family member, or through a stranger was in that line. And doors started opening. I started getting opportunities from places that I had not even knocked. I started getting people bringing things to me that I had only dreamed of. That is a powerful place to be for me, right? I tell people it became the intersection of my purpose, my passion, and my paycheck.
Facts.
It allowed me to live. That's a freedom that I want everyone listening to be able to get. Now, I've talked a lot. There's still a question in there, believe it or not.
Yeah.
The question in there is, for me, it took the ability to tear through the lies that I not only told, but I believed.
Mm-hmm.
For you, being that teenager on the step who already knew what it was you were going to be doing, what happened in your world that let you know that was it? How did you get that much? I got it at 32, 33, 34, 35. You had it at 16, 17. How? Because I want everyone else listening, whether they're 16 or 35 or 47, to be able to start that process.
Right. You know, I had an amazing head start because I had parents who moved the way that you just described moving for your kids. Right. Our parents created a space where, and I to this day don't really understand how or why they made it, or was it conscious, or was it just God guiding them and they didn't know what was happening? Like, how did this happen? Because they truly created a space from birth, really, for me to just be me, for me to be a leader, right? I remember, at 4 or 5 years old, sitting in, or even, 8, 9, whatever, sitting in meetings over in the corner, eating snacks and coloring in a book or doing homework or whatever, while my dad is on the other side of that fellowship hall conducting a meeting for the church, right? Because my mom was in night school trying to get her degree, right? And so there ain't no babysitter and all that stuff. We out on our own, so you gonna sit in the corner and do your work and be quiet while dad's over here handling his business meeting, right? But like, I know that that's where I learned some of my management skills, was from just overhearing that stuff. I wasn't just coloring, I was listening, being nosy, right? Hearing how he dealt with people when they had issues, et cetera, right? Hearing how he dealt with people when they had differing opinions. Not just different from each other, but different from himself as the leader of the church or whatever, right? So I know that my parents are a real reason why I had this ability very early to just stick to my guns, right? And, at first I thought I wanted to be an architect, as a kid.
Right.
Not because I loved architecture, but because the most well-paid person I knew in my sphere I had an uncle who was doing something related to architecture, is what I was told. He's making $80,000 a year. I'm like,
that's it.
That's it. That's what I'm doing. Boom. He an engineer. Cool. That's what we doing.
Yeah.
Right. Then I took one class. And I was like, oh, this is not my life. This ain't for me. Right. And I hated it. But in that process, I realized what I did learn about myself, and I think it's okay for people to admit this about themselves. Everybody might like money or whatever, but I knew I wanted to make the kind of money that would change the situation for my family. And it would change the environment and experiences that I could have.
Yeah.
And it could build infrastructure that becomes legacy for a family.
Like,
right?
That's my thing. I love some legacy, baby.
You know what I mean? So I knew that does have a price tag. You know, that kind of money does have there is a number associated with that.
Yeah.
Or a level at least. And so once I realized that my passion, aligned with that purpose and then ultimately a paycheck.
Yep.
I was like, oh, we making movies. That's what we gonna do.
Marketing's got the 4 P's. I got the 3.
There you go. I love it. So yeah, man, that's really where it came from. And then honestly, I believe that they're in the old African tradition of handing a baby to the eldest person in the family.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about that as something that happens because one is on their way into the world and one is on their way out.
Yeah.
And that's true. But the other thing that happens is just a passing of wisdom.
Yeah.
I was very wise at a very young age.
Yeah.
Because I spent so much time with my grandfather that sold peaches with.
Yeah.
Spent so much time with my grandmother who is still here today, thankfully, but she is Minnie Simpson, you know, in York, South Carolina. Like she, in my opinion, is one of the best connectors ever. She knows all the news in the town before anybody else knows it. Before the newspaper got it, she got the news because she talks to everybody.
Yeah.
People call her to check in, right?
Yeah.
She is just able to communicate with so many different people. And she was a janitor at the high school for I don't know how many decades, right? Yeah. And so because of that, she saw generations of people come through and they knew her as Miss Minnie. So when she retired, even to this day, people, their grandma, their daughter, and their granddaughter all know Miss Minnie, right?
Yeah.
And I yearn for that type of, that's legacy, right?
Yeah.
That ain't got nothing to do with money. That's legacy.
Yeah.
I yearn for that type of legacy. I yearn for that type of community and connection that she has, right? And so I think that's where all of it came from. It's just my lineage, honestly.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
You sparked a question.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Miss Minnie and the roles that people play.
Yeah.
But first, you create a whole other question.
Go for it.
When you were talking about that dream and when you were on that porch and you were looking at the cotton field and you had that conversation and you just knew, right? You knew that's where you wanted to go. And then you said something that really struck me. In your world, there was an architect. The architect made the money. Therefore, you wanted to be the architect. And for me, I grew up much like you, small town Mississippi, Vicksburg, Mississippi, where if I wanted to be successful, there were basically 2 tiers. I could go to tier 2 and I could be a teacher. I could be a fireman. I could be a policeman. That was success. Tier 1, doctor, lawyer, engineer. That was success. No one told me I could be in media. No one told me that I could be a graphic designer. No one told me I could be an author. No one told me that you could be a poet, right? I knew I could be a historian because that's a version of a teacher, but no one told me all these other things. And grateful to my mother and my father. My father was a nuclear engineer who exposed me and everyone else around me to amazing things that we were not able to be exposed to without him. But the question that I have for you is, much like myself, growing up in those small towns where the vision of success is somewhat limited to these tiers, right? How did you learn to dream further than your environment would allow you to see? Like, how did you get there, right? How did you grow from the $80,000 a year architect to, I'm a storyteller. I want to create films. That, to me, that's magical because I failed to do that, right? How did you do that?
Being able to dream beyond the measures you can see is definitely a magical experience, for sure, right?
Yeah.
Again, I got to credit my parents. My mom meant it when she told me every single day, put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
Put your best foot forward, and you can be anything you want to be.
Yeah.
She meant it when she said that to me. Yeah. And even if she did mean it, I believed it clearly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it allowed me. I truly took that to heart. So in fact, and I'm also stubborn. Right? I'm a Scorpio. I'm stubborn, and so when somebody tells me you can't do something, I'm like, okay, I got to go do that.
Let me show you. Let me show
right?
you, homeboy.
Right? For better or worse. Now, for better or worse. Now, as a kid, that get me in trouble. But I'm just saying, for better or worse, I'm like, oh, I can't. Okay, bet I got to do that.
Yeah.
Right? I got to. Oh, that's not possible. Okay, let me go make it possible. Right? Yeah. Because you can't tell me. I also take things very literally often. Right? As a kid, I definitely did. So if you tell me, put your best foot forward, you can do anything in the world. You can do all things through God who strengthens you, right?
Yeah.
Or you know, all things are possible with God. Like if you say those things in the scripture and you're saying that is what we live our life by. And then on the flip side of that, somebody who says they're of God tells me you can't do it. That's a contradiction. That don't make sense.
Yeah.
So am I going to listen to the human who's trying their best to follow God, or am I going to listen to God who said it?
Yeah.
Right? So that was my barometer. And it was just black and white as that.
Yeah.
And so that was part of it. The other part was just that my parents, man, they just exposed me to whatever they could expose me to.
Yeah.
So, you know, part of the reason that I was, you know, more mature than my age a lot of times was because, you know, if my dad was running like a program for high school boys, and he's trying to, you know, and giving them wisdom or giving them nuggets or talking about real high school boy issues and things that help them become men, he don't care if I'm only 7 years old or only 8 years old.
Come get this word. Come get this
Your
message.
mama is in school tonight. She can't keep you. Yeah, y'all. She can't watch you at home tonight. You too young to stay at the house by yourself.
Coming with me.
You coming with me. So I'm 8 years old in a room full of 17, 18-year-old young men. Hearing them talk, I'm coloring and doing my homework in the corner, but I'm eavesdropping. I'm listening to what they talking about, right? So I got a lot of. It's like when you play ball and you play up, right? Like you learn things when you play up. You become a more skilled player because of that. And I think that's attributed to, again, my parents just got exposing me to different things. And you know, I give you one kind of crazy example. I don't remember how old I was. I was probably like 7. I was like maybe like 9 years old, right? Yeah. Science fair, elementary school, just to paint the picture.
Right.
I decided that my science project is going to be to make a portable microwave. That was the idea.
Right.
Not really the experiment, but whatever. Right. So I you know, use all the properties we learned in school of electricity and how it flows and all that to create this little plywood box and put a heating element in it. I'm going to heat up food with it.
Yeah.
That was my idea. I saw a commercial where this company in Charlotte, North Carolina would basically, if you call this number and you have an invention, they will, it's like those commercials with the little cartoon, man. It's like if you have an invention, they'll help you get this invention patented and help
like
you get it made.
Guy with the wheel and all.
Exactly,
I remember that. Yeah,
Invent help, whatever it's called. My mom, I saw that commercial and I wrote down a number and I'm like 9. I told my parents, like, I want to take my portable microwave to this thing. And they...
I love that, though.
Were crazy enough to be like, you know what?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Packed up the car. This is why my imagination at 33 years of age is still big, because they never crushed it. Yeah, they allowed me to dream big, about. Right? Drive me up there. We do the meeting. I got my little, shirt tie on. I showed them my little plywood box and all that. I present my invention. I'm 9 years old. And they basically like, oh, yeah, thank you. We'll be in touch. But they obviously didn't buy it or whatever.
Right.
Now, you ask my mama, somebody stole my idea. Because fast forward years later, you ask my mama, they say I stole the idea. But somebody stole my idea. Because fast forward, in the stores, you would see like a little casserole dish, portable food warmer type of thing. Mm-hmm. And to this day, if you ask her right now, 20 years later,
they stole it.
Somebody stole your idea.
They probably did.
Man,
like the thing I love about that is, because I sit in the seat now as a parent.
Yeah.
Sometimes our desire to protect our children puts them in a shortfall. And what I mean by that is, even though at 9 years old, they may have looked at you and thought inside their head, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But why not let you go through the motions and feel it. And if it doesn't work, fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you still were taught to take the chance.
Take the risk.
And they didn't take the fears they inherently had of themselves and place them on top of you, because you're going to get your own.
That's right.
And there's going to be plenty of them.
Life going to beat you up enough.
Right.
You're going to get your own fear.
I love that they gave you the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? Because that teaches you, take the opportunity. But ties right back to your story in the first episode when you were talking about the premiere for The Land.
Yeah.
No one told you that wasn't going to work. So you didn't have the fear. You asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked.
Yeah.
So you talked about Miss Minnie, you talked about your grandfather, you talked about both of your parents, and how they formed this squad around you that, whether knowingly or unknowingly, prepped you for everything that came tomorrow. And the question that your conversation or your story inspired in me was Miss Minnie and the role she played in the community, and then the role she played in your life, right? Yeah. What are the roles that you think any of us need right now to help us find that success? Whether you're a 9-year-old child dreaming big, whether you're a 47-year-old man still seeing your dreams coming true and working on them, or whether you're in the middle, what are the roles that we need to have around us? What's that ecosystem? What's that ecosystem look like so that we can create and find our way towards success?
The ecosystem you need to find success is actually really simple. Yeah. In my opinion, in my case. Or at least I made it simple.
Right.
I call it my circle of elders, right? Which sounds tribal and Afrocentric and all those things, and it is.
I'm okay with that.
Right? But
I'm blackity black back over
here. Oh
yeah,
baby. All day. But it's I've kind of adopted that and took it into business, into life, etc. Right? So my circle of elders looks like actual family members, like some people we talked about, right? Grandparents, etc., parents. But in the business world, it looks like mentors, right? So it's people that are doing things that I aspire to do, or they're doing something that's adjacent to that where I know they still have applicable knowledge, right? But in that, it's not just about taking, right? It's also like, what can I do to help serve them too? And not that like people who are in a position in life where they are ready to create legacy and give back and give you knowledge on those things, they're not always looking for something in return, but it should be an exchange in some way, right? Yeah. If you can, if you have something you can offer them. And so, it's people like that. It's also people who may not be in my industry at all, but they're just wise, right? And it may not be for business purpose. Sometimes it's for personal, right? So my wife and I, for example, after we met on Tinder, which is a whole other story back in the day, when we met. I
know what the 4th episode's about now.
Yeah, there you go. Love her to death. Like when we met, and we found our way back to each other, we were serious about each other at that point. We're like, okay, like we were on the path to get married. So we took a class. We took a marriage class, which is by far the best decision we've ever made. Was take this marriage class that it's the type of class that people, when they're having trouble in their marriage, probably would have loved to take. We took it before we ever even got engaged, right? And so in that class, we met mentors in that space that I never even thought about having marriage mentors. But it's basically couples who have been married. Some have been married for 5 years, 15 years, 30 years, 40 years, like different times in their lives. And you're able to bring them issues you're having as a dating couple looking to get married. And you can say to them, like, how did you deal with this? Have you ever dealt with this? What does it look like? All those things. And that relationship has continued, right? So, but yeah, that circle of elders is what it looks like. And again, I bring up all those aspects of life because the circle of elders needs to be holistic, because you are a whole person, right? Yeah. You're not a part of a person. Yeah. You're not just a business person. You're not just a married person or a person seeking to get married. You're not just a person who is trying to figure out the community and how to help. Yeah. Right? You need people in all those areas, and that becomes your circle of elders.
Yeah. How does someone find that? Right. Yeah. Let's talk about it from two perspectives, right? Yeah. Life overall, right? The circle of elders. And then in business, I hear people talk all the time about mentorship and wanting a mentor. Yeah. I've gotten letters from people and emails from people who are asking me to be a mentor. I've seen people write letters to CEOs and celebrities and influencers asking them to be mentors. And in most of those cases, my personal feeling is that's the wrong person, right? When I get a letter from someone who I don't know, I have no connection with, and they ask me to be a mentor, I always have a conversation with them. But in that conversation, I tell them I cannot be a mentor to them. And the reason why is because, one, I don't know you, you don't know me. That's not enough in itself. But also, there's someone better. Right. My perspective is there's someone better. There's someone that you can touch, someone who knows your work ethic, your drive, someone who can really teach you. I think it's a mistake when we knock on a door that we think there's notoriety inside of, and we fail to address the actual need that we have. There's someone better, right? One of the impetus for this show is the fact that there is information that we need floating around us daily. Someone could email you or reach out to you about producing a movie, or I'm sure there's someone in the grocery store as they grab their milk who also has that same information and is in closer proximity. A neighbor down the street. One of my early mentors that I got by happenstance was a neighbor. And he just happened to have all the information that I was looking for. So in your mind, how does someone select a mentor? And why is it that maybe it's not the CEO? Why is it maybe not Taraji P. Henson as your mentor? What's the rationale? How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think you nailed it. I think true mentorship is born from relationship.
Right.
It's not you reach out to get mentorship, right? Like that's not real.
Right.
It's not real. And even if somebody says yes, I don't think it's as fruitful. It's not as fruitful connection, right? I'd rather connect with the person in a real way and then say, will you be my mentor? It's not just like a two-step thing. It's not that. It's more like a mentor is different than an advisor.
Like a coach or something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A mentor, an advisor, and an advocate are three very different things. I can kind of break that down. And I was taught that at Morehouse, right, in business school. Like, an advisor is literally what it sounds like. Somebody who just gives you advice.
Yeah.
Now, that might not be somebody you have a relationship with.
Right. That could be the person you email.
It could be you from watching your podcast.
Exactly.
Right? Like that's somebody, or listening to the podcast. Like that's somebody that you hear their advice and you heed their advice. Or you hear their advice and you're like, I think that's helpful for me. That's an advisor. It could be somebody you know, it might not be.
Right.
An advocate is somebody who there's somewhat of a relationship, right? But they're willing to walk into a room and speak on your behalf because it's a room that you're not in yet.
And bring your name up in places you can't yet walk.
That's right.
Yep.
A mentor could do one of those two things or both of those things, but a mentor is a more very personal, intimate relationship that you can call with just about anything, right? To really understand the inner workings of your situation and try to help, and they can help you unpack it, right?
Yeah.
That to me is definitely not somebody you just reach out to a famous person.
Yeah.
I think what we're getting at though is the difference between a need and an intention.
Yes.
Right? Because you can say, I need a mentor. Okay, why do you need a mentor? Do you need a mentor? Are you saying you need a mentor because you need a job?
Yep.
Which is fine, but that's not a mentor. A mentor might not get you a job. And more likely, they won't, right? Unless they're an advocate, right? But if they're just an advisor, then their job is not to get you a job.
Yeah.
Right? So, but if that's your intention. If your intention is, I'm trying to get work, or your intention is, I'm trying to learn about the business, that's something you can definitely get from a mentor, right? Yeah. A mentor, I really enjoy genuinely meeting new filmmakers, new storytellers, new business people that are trying to get in entertainment, all those things. I enjoy meeting people that are on their way in because it wasn't that long ago when I was just getting started, right?
Absolutely.
Literally.
Absolutely.
I mean, the Land came out, the feature version of The Land came out in 2016, right? This is 2023.
Right.
So it wasn't that long ago. 7 years. It's not a long time in our business at all. So I was just there. So I enjoy meeting people who are in that spot and trying to figure out how to get in.
Yeah.
My path, if I'm in the advisor role in your circle of elders, right? I'm open to telling you my story all day long, but my path is so non-traditional and kind of I found a side door and another door and I just kind of, whatever. Like it's not really a path that you can follow per se. God gave me that path, right? Yeah. So I just followed that. Yeah. And so often I don't feel bad about sharing the story, but I definitely feel a level of responsibility to share on top of the story that I only took this path because I knew my steps were ordered.
Yeah.
Right? But if I was doing it based on what made sense, I would have never done what I did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the advisor role. The way I've always looked at it was mentorship, advocacy, and championship.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's relatively the same thing. And the thing that I want to make sure that people understand is that I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a chance and reaching out to someone you don't know because you think they may have information that you want or need. But I think the point you made about the need and the intentionality behind it is so critical to understand before you send that email.
That's right.
Because the other side of that email or the phone call has to be some type of consumption or recognition of that email or that phone call.
And that intention.
Exactly. And when you put the word mentor in, or champion or advocate or advisor, that has its own set of connotations, right?
Yeah.
And so you may create a no when it could have been a yes if you understand your intention.
100%.
And you phrase the request adequately. Because to your point, I'm not mentoring people who just randomly reach out to me. I'll have a call and I can advise you, and that can be the start of a relationship that can grow into healthy mentorship. And I think that's what so many people miss. They want to reach out to someone because you have a name, because you're a CEO, and they just ask you to do this. And mentorship to people who care is a commitment.
It's a real commitment.
Right.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah.
It's patience. It's pain sometimes because you'll begin to care about a person. So you do need to establish that relationship, grow it, take care of it until it grows into one of these other elements.
Yeah.
And you got to have them all. You got to have mentors and advisors, and you need this. You need this army. You need this circle of elders. You need that.
Yeah, for sure.
So talking about that, whether they're known or unknown, I love to give people their flowers.
Yeah.
Who are yours? Who are the people outside of mother, father, and grandparents that we've talked about who played those roles in your life and who advised you when you needed it, mentored, championed, who gave you access, who taught you how to get it? Who did that for you?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. As we're sitting here talking about don't reach out randomly, ask for mentorship. I was absolutely that kid.
Me too.
You know what I'm saying? I learned the hard way not to do that, but I was absolutely that kid, and especially at Morehouse. Like when I found out that I got into USC, and I knew I didn't know anybody in LA except for my first cousin, Lee Thompson Young, who played Jet Jackson. That was the only person I knew in LA, and I knew I needed a lot more people to really make this 2 years count. Right. So I literally put a list together and hunted down people's emails of every single Black studio development executive, Black producers, right, Black agents, and emailed every single one of them a detailed but personal letter.
Love it.
And I would say probably 80% hit me back and were like, let's get it. Let's I'll talk to you. Let's have a meeting, right?
Love it. Love it.
Now,
love it.
I didn't ask them to be my mentor.
Right.
I didn't ask them to help me get a job or do anything. All I asked them for was, I'd love 15 and 30 minutes of your time just to learn more about what you do. I asked them for a learning opportunity.
Yeah, I love that.
Which people respond better to.
Yes.
Right? And it was true. It wasn't, I'm going to ask for a learning opportunity and I'm going to get in here and really try to turn this into a job hunt.
Right.
It wasn't that, right? Now, from that, one of the people that I interned with in Atlanta was Will Packer and Rob Hardy at Rainforest. Right. And while I was there, built a relationship and then invited with, again, going back to the best way to really connect with somebody and build a relationship is to find a way to serve them. Right.
Yeah.
And Will at the time wasn't really in the office that much because he was shooting Think Like a Man. And I asked him, would you ever think about doing some sort of activation or something at Morehouse in the AUC? Like I could put it together. Like I told you on the last episode, like I was running the film association on campus. We were popping and we had the film major coming. So I knew all the players to help make something like that happen. And so I asked, like, could we help you by doing some big marketing push? He was like, yeah, let's set it up. So he connected with the studio. Boom, we set up a big thing and all the cast came out and they did a big thing for us and had a big kind of cookout thing outside for us. And he did a panel. It was him and the director, Tim Story, right? And so watch how God works. That was in service, right, of somebody who I looked up to, not as a mentor at the time, but just as somebody who could be an advisor, right? And I found a way to serve him in his movie. When he drove up, when he pulled up in his very nice AMG, pearl color AMG, pulled up on campus, and this other black man gets out of the car with him, right? T-shirt and jeans. I'm just thinking, and you know, where I'm from, like, I'm taught you talk to everybody the same way, whether it's CEO or the janitor, you talk to everybody the same way. So I didn't know who. I thought it was just Will's homeboy. So we talking, we chopping it up. And I'm probably cracking jokes that I shouldn't crack if I really knew who he was, right?
Right.
Fast forward, the panel happens. Will and Tim do the panel. It's amazing. And somebody asked Will, what was special about this movie for you? And his answer was, you know, the thing that was most special to me was that it was the first time in my career where it was me as a black producer with a black director and a black studio executive.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said black studio executive, he pointed. He's like, James, come over here. He was talking to the guy that I had been chopping it up with and cracking jokes with, right? He's like, oh, one second, brother. And he went and got on the panel with him. This man was the senior vice president of Sony Screen Gems, which is a studio that did Think Like a Man and Takers and all these things, right? And afterwards, I was kind of embarrassed. I'm like, I don't know what I done said to this man, like he the homie. And so I'm talking to James. His name is James Lopez. I talked to him after. I said, hey, man, you know, it's good to meet you. I'm trying to clean it up. I was pleasure meeting you. I'm getting real, like, professional now. He's like, what's your name again? I was like, Stephen Love. And he said, you know, you say you got in USC. I said, well, I didn't get in yet, but I applied. I feel really good about it. I'm gonna get in. I ain't got the letter yet.
Right.
And he said, well, if you get into USC, call me. I got a job for you. I got an internship for you.
Amen.
I was like, that's awesome, right? Fast forward, I get into USC. I emailed him immediately. I call him. I try to call him. They get answered.
Immediately.
I emailed him.
Immediately.
Hey, Mr. Lopez, I got into USC. I'm coming to LA. You say you got a job for me. And he you know, he still put me through the process, maybe apply and all that, and do the interviews with, you know, his junior people, and then with him, I get the job. That was my first job in Hollywood. And that's where it was at a studio. And all of my classmates were like, we just got to LA. How in the world did you get an internship, right?
Get a job.
And from that day on, man, James Lopez was a great mentor to me. At the same time, one of the people I had emailed was Devon Franklin.
Yeah.
You know, because again, like he was young, black man, gone to USC as well, right? Linked up with him, and he also was trying to help me through it. This was back when he was a studio executive at Sony at the same time. So I was on the lot now.
Mm-hmm.
Country boy of South Carolina, on the lot, wearing suits that are way too big. And everybody else got on, even as the head of the studio, wearing T-shirt and jeans, which James had to get to school me on. Like, you don't even wear no suit to work. This is entertainment. But I would go from my internship at one end of the lot with James, right, and walk to the other end of the Sony lot to go sit in Devon's office to talk to him. And and it was just a surreal experience that I had these two black men that saw enough in me to be like, I wanna help you.
Yeah.
At least tell you what this really is, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and it's Charles King, you know, even though I don't know if we've ever had like the mentorship conversation necessarily, right? But like I look up to him in that way because he was my first movie was his first movie. Him as a financier and EP and me as a producer.
Right.
And, you know, fast forward now we're together on Tyrone, but I've learned a lot from just being, you know, at the feet of him too. So Deborah Martin Chase, she's a legendary producer that is, you know, a black woman, produced the Black Cinderella that we all love, right, with Brandy back in the day, Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, but now she's even now she's producing Equalizer with Queen Latifah on CBS. Like she's a giant man of a producer, and it probably doesn't get her just due, honestly, right?
Yeah,
we can imagine why. But she has absolutely always been in my corner anytime I call her for anything. And fun fact, it's not just me that comes from her lineage. It's before me, her intern was Tracy Oliver, who wrote co-wrote Blackening and produced The Blackening.
Okay.
And she also
that was a lot of fun,
right? And she also was a writer and creator of Girls Trip, right?
Oh wow, okay.
And also of a bunch of a show coming in on Apple soon. Like Tracy Oliver was her intern before me, right? Before Tracy was Shonda Rhimes was her intern.
Wow.
Right? So her lineage is crazy. Her family tree is crazy, right? Deborah Martin Chase, legend. So
that's real.
Yeah, man. I definitely in the business definitely have great people that, you know, and obviously there's been other mentors too that don't look like me, like Todd Black, who escape artist who produced all the Denzel stuff for Sony. You know, Ram Bergman, who produced all the Knives Out movie and Looper and all that. Like, really great people in the industry who just kind of, wrapped their arms around me in a real way, man. So I'm grateful.
Man, one of the key thing I think you said there was service, right? And what I love about your story and the mistake that I've seen people do before is they'll understand the need to serve. They'll understand the need to bring something that betters this person's world. But they don't always take the time to put real thought into what does this person need. So you sat back, watched the situation, looked at opportunities, and then found a way to use the resources you had at your disposal to tie to this person's world and create something better for them.
Yeah.
And because you did the strategic work to bring some level of service that was meaningful, it led to today.
Led to today, facts.
That's crazy.
I'll tell you what's full circle about that. James Lopez now runs Macro with Charles King. And so on Tyrone, that was the first project that James worked on when he got to Macro, was to help us finish the last touches on Tyrone. See how that comes full circle?
Yeah.
So when I had the premiere for They Clone Tyrone last week, I'm standing on the red carpet next to James Lopez and Charles King, two people who helped me get where I am.
That's dope.
Isn't that amazing?
That's dope.
Now I'll tell you now on the other side of it, obviously, I still am seeking mentorship, right?
Right, of course.
It
should never end.
It never ends. You got to always seek new information. Information is key, but I am finding myself now, which is still crazy to me because I feel like I'm still, in my early 20s, but I'm finding now that people are coming to me for mentorship or advisorship or advocacy or whatnot. And I realized that I could reach so many more people if I had an infrastructure that allowed me to help people, right? In the business, right? And so that's where Invisible Collective comes from, and that's where some of our other initiatives come from. Like Made in Her Image was a company, an organization I'm on the board of.
Yeah.
But that program is literally to help girls of color between the ages of 8 and 18, help them find their voice through cinematic storytelling, right?
Yeah.
And the founder found a way to teach them, real skills. And whether they decide to go into movies or not, or making, actually making cinema or not, it gives them a tool set, a set of tools to be able to go do other things, right? Like there's so many, storytelling is applicable no matter what industry you end up in.
Yeah. You just mentioned a couple of things happening, and I know everyone listens like, well, what is that? Tell them what it is.
What's that? Oh, Invisible Collective.
Yeah, break it on down.
Yeah. So between movies, when I first started, after The Land we were talking about earlier, right? We make the movie, goes to Sundance 2016.
Right.
We sell it. It gets put in the theaters, ends up on Netflix and Showtime, all this amazing stuff, right? But I was still broke. So I was trying to figure out how to make money in between movies. But I also knew that Hollywood loves a good box, and it's not a malicious thing necessarily, but as an agent or a representative or executive or any of that, they need to be able to understand quickly who you are as a creator, right, or as a producer. So they need to be able to tell somebody in 15 seconds, this is what they do.
Right.
And so that means you end up in a box often, right? It's just a byproduct. And so I wanted to be intentional about not being out to the world. I'm producing commercials, I'm producing music videos, right? So I was doing it sort of quietly while I was developing independent movies and doing the Sundance Lab or whatever else. So people saw me as a film producer. But fast forward to second quarter of 2018, everything sort of converged in a real way. It was no longer a secret. We had a movie, They Clone Tyrone, obviously. The pitch version of that movie became a bidding war around town, and we sell it, right? And so now every studio in town knows who is hearing my name in some form or fashion. At the same time, the director of my very first movie, The Land, which is Stephen Cable Jr., had gotten the job to do Creed 2, to direct Creed 2. And so now people are like, oh, you worked with him before we knew who he was. And then at the same time, literally the same week as the bidding war started for They Clone Tyrone, the pitch, a commercial I produced called The Talk for Procter & Gamble, like the conversation that...
I remember that one.
Yeah.
I love that one, bro. That was you?
Dope. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so it's like the conversation that Black people have with our kids about how to move through society, whether it be police interactions.
I loved that.
It's amazing, man.
Spot. For me, I'm a marketer one, but to remember a commercial that touches you like that,
yeah,
That was real.
It was cinema, man. Honestly, it was. I was blessed to work on that. The director was Malik Vital, was a homie that went to USC as well, and it was just like opportunity to tell a story that reflects our journey through several decades and the talk that we have to have with our kids in order for them to really survive and thrive, right?
Yeah.
And so, and how that talk has changed or hasn't changed from the 50s to now. And so, anyway, that piece went to Cannes and won the Film Grand Prix, the top prize. Get back from Cannes, we get nominated for an Emmy. Then that's when, and I didn't even know what getting nominated for an Emmy was possible for commercial, but I obviously didn't turn it down. And so after the nomination, that's when the They Clone Tyrone pitch, a bidding war happened. And
that was a series of events that was
all
just lined you up.
Like 2 or 3 months, like 2 months, basically.
Wow. It was hot, brother.
And so I was like, this is the moment. This is when it happens. Now, and because commercial music videos, so I thought, God had other plans, so I thought was a means to an end financially until I could get my movies going. I had the thought, like, am I gonna just let these accolades just sit there now? Is that what's gonna happen? Like, am I just not gonna do commercial music videos now? Like, I actually enjoy producing music videos and enjoy producing commercials, right? Because you get to work with so many different people in a short time span. And so, at around that time, I met somebody who was starting a commercial company. His name was Justin Polk.
Right. And
he had a partner named Mel Jones. And I'd known Mel from the independent producing side for forever. And so we came together and started a company called The Invisible Collective.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of facetious, right? The title is because the whole sort of impetus of the company is that there is a real lack of visibility for directors and filmmakers in the advertising world that are people of color, women, LGBT+, the physically differently abled, military vets, straight up absent for the most part, right? On the main stage. And so at that point, this was pre-revolution, we ain't got no black folks, let's go find some, right?
Gotcha.
This is before it was cool to be, DEI and all that, right?
Gotcha.
So it's 2018, we started this company, it's just us. Ironically, the first commercial we did was for Tabitha Brown for Whole Foods, and when I was managing her at the time, which is a whole other story we'll talk about in another episode. But Tabitha blew up with this Whole Foods video. They did it. I did a deal with her with Whole Foods. We needed to do this piece of content, in the thing, and we shot. That was our very first commercial, right? And so at the time, man, it was like, all right, this is not just a commercial company. This is an infrastructure that we can use to serve our community of creators, right? So basically, film, all of our other industries are, we all know there's work to be done as far as being more progressive, more inclusive. Advertising, in my opinion, is at least 10 years behind where film and music is, right? And so we made a point to make our roster exactly what it is. And then that became the apparatus that allows new filmmakers, new storytellers that may come from film or TV, and maybe they've had experience in some way there, but they want to get into commercials. We have people like that. We have people who are extremely experienced in commercials, but want to be able to get into movies and TV, right? And obviously, if I meet you and I'm like, you're killing it in commercials and music videos, right? I know you want to do a movie. I know that's going to be tough for us right now to get, but let me walk you over to Invisible Collective. Let's do more commercials and music videos together.
Yeah.
But do it with the intention of getting you into movies. So now the things that you choose look different.
Yeah.
The way that you execute looks different.
Yeah.
Because we're doing it with the mind of like, you got this particular movie you want to do. Let's write a treatment for a music video that feels like that movie you want to do.
I love that.
So it's just an ecosystem, man, for creators to really grow and capitalize, honestly, on the creativity.
Man, I absolutely love that, brother. How do people tap into that kind of thing?
Yeah. It's just the website, invisiblecollective.co. It really is that simple. Like we have 2 tiers actually. So there's a roster of 15 directors who are our mainstay directors who are really experienced in booking commercials and music videos left and right.
Right.
But then for those people that are just on the come up that we see, we're like, you're really, really talented. Like, I see it. You don't have the experience yet to get the big commercials yet. That's cool. Just because you're not ready for the roster doesn't mean you're not ready to work.
Right,
So
right.
we have what we call just the collective, which is just people that we believe in, that we think are ready, that we think will be ready soon.
Right.
So we put them there, find them, smaller work and help build their reel up, right?
Yeah.
And the idea, obviously, we would love it if people that we help build up decide to sign with us. But even if they don't, it's still some good in the world because now you got a new director that's out in the world and ready to go do big work.
Yeah.
And so it's not about like controlling that in that way. It's just about building community.
Yeah. Man, I absolutely love that. Like just again, going back to the last episode, the gift that we give.
That's right.
That's what it's really, really about.
Yeah.
Now, in your instance, in your case, you have done a bunch of different things to get to where you are now.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd love to kind of let me back up. We've talked about like dreaming, which is critically important. If you can't dream, and ain't nobody just walking up handing you that box of success. It's just it's not happening.
Yeah.
So you dream something, and then while you're dreaming it, you're creating your circle of elders, right? The support system, the mechanism, the ecosystem that allows you to ascend, right? You're doing your work, they're doing their work, you're dreaming, you're building. But without opportunity, where does it go, right? So as you were doing all that work, as you were doing the work, as they say, how did you also create or find the opportunities? And like get technical, right? You talked about the deal you did for Tabitha Brown.
Yeah.
You've got deals through your own companies now. You're tied to They Clone Tyrone. You've got other stuff coming out. But I think one of the things that people wonder is like, how the hell does it happen, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I've wondered that.
Yeah.
And now I find myself in a position where I'm seeing how some of this stuff happens.
Yeah.
And some of it is way outside of my control.
Yeah.
And some of it is.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, how did you take all that work and turn it into opportunity and action?
Great question. You talked about what's in your control and what's not.
Yeah.
You got to learn to control what you can control.
Yeah.
And don't try to control what you can't control.
Amen.
Right? That's the first step. That awareness honestly opened so many doors just mentally for me, right? And now, there are a lot more things in our control than we may think.
Right.
And so, tactically, for me, it looks like, okay, what programs exist for producers specifically?
Right.
That will give me an opportunity to make more stuff with other people's resources, right?
Right.
Because I didn't have any. So how to do it with OPM, other people's money.
Yep.
And that is unfortunately a very finite amount of programs, right? There's a lot of programs out there for writers, there's a lot of programs out there for directors, et cetera. But there's not a ton of programs for producers, right? Sundance Producers Lab was one of them. So I had my eyes on that one.
Right.
Another one was the Film Independent Project Involved Lab, which wasn't solely for producers, but they had a track for directors, a track for writers, a track for producers, and a track for executives also, aspiring executives. And in that program, that you get the opportunity to make a movie, to make a short film.
Right.
And you're doing it with people that are in these other tracks. And so that meant I'm meeting new filmmakers that I never would have met before, right? I'm meeting new crew people that I never met before. And I'm getting the opportunity to make a short film that is well-resourced financially and infrastructure-wise, et cetera. And so that was one. And I ended up making 2 movies in that program, right? Because they needed another producer on another project. In the Sundance Producers Lab, that gave me the opportunity to take a project I was developing and take it through a ringer. Because they bring mentors, advisors into that program who have produced a bunch of movies before, movies that we've all seen, and really just tear your script to shreds, right? Creatively in a good way and build it back up. Your production plan, your budget, all those things, and really help pressure test your ideas, right? And your business model, et cetera.
Right.
That was absolutely invaluable, right? The Peter Stark Producers Program was another one where I had my eyes set on that one. There's not, at the time, there's a few producers programs, like grad programs, but that was the one that I saw that was in LA, had a ridiculously amazing track record of producing big-time studio executives, studio presidents even, screenwriters, showrunners, producers, all those things. So those were sort of the earmarks that I really pointed to try to find. And so I guess all in all, what I'm saying is I look for existing infrastructures that had a track record of producing producers. And once I found that, I just targeted those things. Now, it didn't mean that I was just going to get in just because I applied, because that's the other piece that people are like, well, yeah, but I see that stuff too. How do I get in?
Right.
This is where the hustle came in, right? So like I think I said on the last episode that God's love is unconditional, but the blessings are conditional.
Amen.
Right? And it's conditioned upon your work ethic and your faithfulness and all those things, your belief.
Mm-hmm.
I believed, for sure, from a very young age, as we talked about. I believed. My work ethic comes from watching, my grandma, like I said, Miss Minnie, who was a janitor for decades, right, in a school, and my granddad, who was out in the sun for decades in the farm, right? And my parents, who was getting after it even after they had me. And so I knew I had those things, but I had to figure out strategy on top of that. And so I would do things like, I'm going to find out who the decision maker is to get you into this program. I'm going to send them a personal note, right? A handwritten note. Just like things that we learned in business school, that I learned in business school, honestly, that are sort of ways of old at this point.
Right.
But because of that, it stands out when a young kid is doing these things.
That makes it unique now.
Yeah, so I'm reaching out, I'm doing that. I'm looking for any touch points that they like mutuals that we may have, right? Mm-hmm. So even if I go on LinkedIn and I find this person, if I don't have to reach out to them cold, I try not to. I try to find who we have that's mutual. Yeah. And if I know them well enough, I say, hey, do you know so-and-so well? I see y'all are connected. I'm trying to get into this program. They're running it, blah, 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 right? I might send 100 different versions of those letters or messages or what have you, to those different variations. And of those 100, I might get 10. But those 10 produce real access. Yeah. So,
because reality, all it takes is one.
All it takes is one.
Just the right one.
All it takes is one.
The right one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And listen, listeners, I hope you are paying attention. I hope you are paying attention. And even more than that, I hope you can hear his stories, his way, his experience, and notice the pieces and the tactics from his world that you can pull and implement in yours. Because they work, right? They work. He gave you the game. All you got to do is apply it. And going back to episode 1, be tenacious in the application of that.
Yeah.
And understand that, to your point, failure is only failure if you allow it to stop you, right? It's an opportunity to learn something. Or as Octavio, CEO of Revolt, has said many times, failing forward, right? That's the key to all this. So we're going to have a part 3 of this. I can't wait for you to hear that. We're going to close out this episode. In closing it, I want to ask you this one question. If you had, actually it's probably 2 questions, just to be real.
Okay, it's all good.
Looking at the entire journey that you've taken us through to today, what's the one thing you think you did amazingly well? And what's the one thing that you did horribly? And the reason I want to ask that question is because I think social media and life in general has created this place where everyone around us looks like they're successful. And then you look at your life and you see all your errors. Editing is what keeps their errors, their failures, their opportunities from you, but you see your own. But just because you might have those moments where you stumble or the roadblock or the hurdle is too big, you can still find your way to a significant amount of success. No one is there who has not gone through that. So I love to hear those 2 from you so they can hear the fact that you've been through it all.
Yeah. I think the thing that I did horribly in the beginning was listen. Not just hear, and I'm not talking about like heeding advice. That I did well for the most part, except for when I was being stubborn. But just really listening.
Right.
Listening to what people say. Yeah. But more importantly, as my dad would say, listen to what people don't say.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that.
Yeah.
The thing that, and I've gotten better at that, gotten way better at that. Part of it's due to my wife being a therapist, and she listens for a living. But the thing that I struggled with then and still am working on now, honestly, to be vulnerable about it, is maintaining relationships in a real way. And I'm not talking about just business relationships, like trying to make a connection and it's transactional. Right. That I can do all day long, right? But truly maintaining long-standing relationships that may turn into business or not.
Yeah.
I think, the hustle culture of it all attributes to that, right? We get onto a project or whatever, and you get under a rock and you're so focused on that, and it becomes tough to stay connected sometimes, right? And then you pop up and it's 6 months later and you try to reconnect. And for some friends, that's totally fine because they got to stay on the same wave and you pop up and y'all hit it off. A year later, it's like, we good. We picking up where we left off.
Skip a beat, yep.
Well, for some people, they're not as low touch, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's different. Some people need more interaction. And so if you're gone for 6 months or away for 6 to 9 months and you don't connect, then there's something lost there. You have to take a step back and rebuild from that, from 2 steps back instead of continuing to move forward. And so that's something that I've continued to try to work on, in a real way. Yeah. Being intentional about that.
Yeah.
Thing I've been amazing at is being absolutely not just okay, but excited about being a magnet for people who want no parts of the chaos that I love doing. Right?
Yeah, right.
And that really just boils down to looking to my left and looking to my right. Right? Which is interesting because the thing that I say that I'm challenged with is relationships. But the thing that I'm great with is born from relationships. Yeah. Right? Being able to say, let's zoom out for a second and see the big picture. Right? I can see 10 years from now where this can lead to. Right? That's a gift. And I'm only amazed at it because it's literally a gift to be able to see where we're going, right? And to see how different people and pieces can work together.
Yeah.
That's a gift, right? Being able to be 30,000 foot up is a gift.
Yeah.
But that meant being excited about being in the middle and saying, I'm only a producer, right? And not to diminish it, but I am a producer.
Right.
I don't want to write. I don't want to direct. I don't want to act. Although I've been in front of some people's cameras, and I have, like yours, but I had no intention of acting, right? I'm a producer. I want and I love dealing with putting these teams together, helping to build your vision, right? As a creative, helping to build your vision, helping to take it to the next level, helping to deal with the politics of whatever company we decide to go with, having to deal with the politics of navigating our industry and putting people together and getting the deals done and negotiating all those things, and then having to deal with your vision being compromised and now you need me to go fight for it or vice versa. The powers that be need, the studio or distributor, whatever, may need some things in place that you're not really feeling, but I got to help you understand why we got to do this or whatever. All those things together is what producing is.
Yeah.
And it means that my friends who are directors and writers and actors and all those things, they can be on the red carpet. They can be in front of the camera. They can be out in the middle of it all and be the celebrity of it all. I'm absolutely excited and okay to be able to walk into Walmart when I'm 50 years old.
Amen.
And nobody know who I am at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Long as the check clear.
Long as the check clear. Brother, I hear that. Hey, man.
Yeah.
This has been another good one. I love when we can really get detailed.
Yeah.
And talk not just tactically, but to be honest, like emotionally.
That's right.
Like, because that is people love to, discount emotion and hide emotion. But the reality is, emotion, at least for me, is so significant in my world that it creates the lanes that I end up in. Like, it is because of my emotion that I find my passion. It is because of my emotion, like to the good or to the bad, right? It's because it's not all good that comes from it, but to be able to talk about your experience from an emotional standpoint and allow people to connect to that and pull the levers and the tactics from your experience and add to theirs, that's what the show is about. Like, that's literally why we built this platform. Man, this has been great. We end every episode much like we did the first one. Tell the people how they can track you, engage with you, follow you. Like, where do they go?
Yeah. The best way to get at me is on Instagram, Dr. Love 12, DOCTALOVE 12.
That's it. Hey, if you hadn't, go right now. They clone Tyrone.
Yes, sir.
It is amazing. Dig in.
Appreciate
With that,
it, man.
Wild Black, peace. We out.
All right.
Love you.